Good morning, good evening, and good day, whatever time of the day, night, or evening this finds you. I am Dean. I am the host of Hacking Self Storage, and today we have an unbelievable episode for you. It is episode 294 episodes. Jesus Christ. I put a LinkedIn post on the other week about 10K invested equals £200,000 worth of net profit. I got some amazing comments, but I also got some negative comments as well. Not negative comments, but I got some messages, people saying, it's impossible, you're not doing this right. And I'm like, well, first of all, it wasn't me. And second of all, I love it. I love negative comments. I love all comments because we can always learn something from somebody objecting and disagreeing. Now, this 10K invested to a £200,000 yearly profit was not something I did. I wish I did it, but it was from another self-storage owner. And I haven't asked for permission to disclaim who it is. So I'm not going to mention who it is. But I was talking to him and was going through different bits and bobs. And all of a sudden he said something that was, whoa. Back up a minute. What have you done? How did you do it? Teach me more, learn me, I'm listening, I'm all ears. And so I want to explain to you that you don't need a bucket load of money to set up a self-storage. And if I'm honest, I was in one of those camps where I believed you needed a bucket load of money. And I was talking to another entrepreneur, another friend, not in the self-storage industry, and I was explaining this concept. And I was like, how come I never saw this before? And he goes, it's simple, Dean. He said, you've got the money now, so therefore you don't need to start thinking like, a bootstrapped entrepreneur. That side of your brain isn't working like it was when you didn't have the money. I was like, do you know what? That is so true. And sometimes you've got to hustle, sometimes you've got to grind, and other times you've got to actually think outside the box. And so in self-storage, I was always under the impression that the reason that self-storage is so great is because the moat that we put around ourselves, and the moat is the capital expense. However, with containers, we know that there's less of a capital expense, but there's still a capital expense. This podcast is going to teach you how and why there is no capital expense, or there doesn't have to be if you are very, very clever. And it's almost like the Richard Branson way of thinking when he started his airline, Virgin Atlantic or whatever it is, Virgin, because what basically he had a deal with Boeing that if it didn't work, he could give the planes back, etc. More to it than that, but that essentially, in a nutshell, is what happened. And that way of thinking, my friends, is so powerful. And what we've got to do is limit the downside, and we've got to maximize the upside. And I love that. And how can we do that in self-storage? Well, it's very, very simple. This gentleman invested less than £10,000. And by the way, you've got to go out there and you've got to ask the questions. You've got to be a little bit cheeky, because otherwise you don't get, normal people do not get deals like this. So the normal way of approaching a deal would not work in this circumstances. You've got to ask the questions that most people wouldn't. So it was 10K invested, and it's turned out to be a £200,000 a year net profit. Unbelievable. Take my hat off. Absolutely brilliant. And what did he do? Well, first of all, he lowered the capital expense, because capital expense is massive. Even if you're buying containers, what can cost £3,250 right now for good containers, £250 delivered. So that's £3,500. If you want to paint them, graphotherm, etc., it's going to be £4,500. If you buy 10, that's still 45 grand plus VAT. That's a lot of money just for 10 containers. If you're buying 20, that's 90 grand. If you're buying 40, that's 180 grand of capital expenses before you have even started. And yes, you might want to, when you first open up the doors for a self-storage facility, I do believe in containers, I do believe you need more than one or two. It needs to look like a self-storage facility. So minimum, I believe you need 10. And so that's 45 grand. A lot of people don't have 45 grand to spend, or just throw away an idea because you don't know if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. It's going to work or not, who knows? And so what this gentleman did was he found a plot of land in a place where he didn't know if it was, I can't give you the location because then you'll know who, you can Google it and find out who it is. He didn't know if this was going to work. So what he did was he found a bit of land in a good location, what he thought was a good location, but had no idea if there was a demand there. So all he did was talk, yes, to the landowner. Crazy. Talk to the landowner and just say, listen, if I've got an idea, if this works, I can sign a 20-year lease, which is good for me and good for you. But if it doesn't work, then obviously it's not going to be good for me if I sign a long lease, etc. So what I want to do is I just want to try this. I want to trial it, and I want to give you a 6-month lease, but I don't really want to pay anything, or as close to, I don't exactly know how much you paid for 6 months. I don't know if he paid anything, but I know certainly it wasn't the normal lease agreement that he would have. So he had a break clause after 6 months. The owner of the land finally agreed, because the upside for them as well, what we've got to do is, so many people go into a conversation about taking, they ask. What we've got to do is, you have to portray and get across the benefits for them. What are the benefits for them? The benefits for this landowner is, hey, listen, if this works, if you give me 6 months, I can probably give you a 20-year lease. A 20-year lease, that is incredible. But it's a win-win. It's a win for the landowner, because he's got nothing to lose. He's got no tenant there now. So what's giving him 6 months? It's not a lot, especially when the upside is a 20-year lease. So it's a win for the landowner, and it's a win for the operator as well. It's a win-win for both. It's a win for the tenant, win for the landowner. And so he agreed to a 6-month contract. And then he thought, right, okay, what do I do now? So I need containers in, and I don't want to spend 45 grand on containers. I don't want to buy 10 containers. He actually, I think it was 40 containers he put down there, 45 containers. And so what he didn't want to do was have the capital expense, first of all, of having all those containers shipped. So he did a deal with the container site and said, listen, I think I'm going to need to buy these, but I don't know right now. Can we do a 6-month deal where I rent them off you, and if it doesn't work, then you can take them back off me? So we're renting for like 10 to 13 pound a week, whatever the rental is. I don't know the intricacies of it. So it could be 10 pound, it could be 13 pound, but it's not much. And so 40 containers, say 10 pound a week, it's 400 pound. 400 pound. So you take that's like 20 grand a year, so 10,000 pound for the first 6 months. Not a massive risk, because if it works, then that's fantastic. I hope my maths are right, by the way. I don't like doing public maths. I think I'm normally good at maths, but public maths, I get all nervous and get flustered and everything. So hopefully them sums are right. And so there's very, very little downside. So he's got free or little rent to pay for 6 months, and he's got the containers on a rental basis with an option to buy afterwards. So the downside is limited, but the upside is massive, because this site, it could have 100, 200 containers on. It's a big site. And so what he's going to do then is see if it works, and there's no risk, or very, very little risk. Obviously there is some risk, but there's a very, very little risk. And sure enough, it worked. It filled up really, really quickly, and now he's getting more and more containers. And what he's doing now is, this year he'll make £200,000. He's taking all that £200,000, that £200,000 profit. He's not taking it out of the company, and he's utilizing that to buy the containers. So he's not buying the containers out of his own money. He's using the customer's rental money to buy the containers. So within 15 to 24 months, he will have had and bought all the containers, and he will have £200,000 profit for every single year coming after that subsequent year. And not only that, the beauty is that you're creating an asset that you can sell. £200,000 a year. I get asked this question all the time. I've been asked it today again. I must have been asked it 3 times this week. What multiple is container sites? The answer is, I have no idea. I don't know, because if you ask me what multiple indoor self-storage is, I can tell you. I can roughly tell you what people are paying. But container sites, I can't really tell you at the minute, because there hasn't been a documented case I can find that I can see. I know a normal business goes between 1.7 and 2.7 times multiple, but self-storage containers is not a normal business, because it's very hands-off. There's not a lot of moving parts. So therefore that will increase the multiple, and it's a recurring business model. So that increases the multiple as well. Indoor, I probably think you can get, depending on the size, you can get between 6 and 12, size dependent, indoor self-storage. I know that because there is big boys who want to buy your site if it's in a good look. It's a load of criteria, but fundamentally it's between 6 and 12 times, depending on the size. I've spoken to smaller people, smaller self-storage facilities who want 6 times multiple, when you're not going to get it. You're not going to get 6 times multiple in a small location. You're not indoor. And so I think with a container site, I think it's safe if it's, because don't forget cash flow straight away as well. It's a cash flowing asset. It's brilliant. And so I believe that 4 times multiple is a very, very safe multiple that you can hang your coat on, because I don't think you'll get less than 4 times multiple. I think 4 times multiple for an established, mature I'd buy a container site 4 times multiple. But do I think you can get more? I think that we probably can get more. I don't think it's going to be as high as 8 times multiple, but it could be. It could be anywhere between 4 and 8 times multiple, depending on location, depending on the condition of your containers. I mean, don't get me wrong, these containers have got to be good. There's so many containers. I went to go and see one the other day just to drive around, and they were banged up shit things of 20 years old, over 20 years old. These containers are not being looked after at all. So that site is never, ever going to get a 3 times multiple, let alone, well, it might get a 3 times multiple. I wouldn't like to buy a 3 times multiple. It might do because it's a cash flow asset and it's a recurring business model. I know the full, so maybe, but I wouldn't want to be. And so I think that if we're doing our projections, then you can always count on the 4 times multiple for a container site. And I think that the actual multiple is probably in between 5 and 6. I would guess that's my best guesstimate. But at the minute, the problem with container sites is, and I've been speaking to somebody who's going to set up 10 container sites and then expecting this massive exit. I don't think you'll get it because there's not somebody out there that's buying external units. There's loads of funds right now buying indoor self-storage. There's Big Yellow. There is Safe Store. There is the Americans coming in. There's that one who just bought McCarthy's for $37.5 million. There is loads of people interested in inside self-storage, indoor self-storage, but there's no funds at the minute that I'm aware of who are buying container sites. Will that ever change? I believe it will. I fundamentally believe it will. When self-storage becomes more mainstream, I believe that there's going to be such a clamor for indoor self-storage that the value is going to go up for indoor self-storage. And that means it's going to drag up the value for outdoor external units as well. And so right now, I don't think there's a big market for it. Especially, I don't think there's anybody who can afford a 10 site. I don't think you'll sell that. You obviously you will sell it to somebody. But the problem is, I don't think there's a lot of people willing to buy 10 locations at the minute for self-storage, outdoor container sites. There will be somebody, but there's not the market there. There's not, because the more and more people who are interested, obviously takes up the price, supply and demand. And the more demand there is, the more people who are interested, the more the price is going to go up. At the minute, I think there's very, very few people who will be looking to buy 10 sites. So I could in a nutshell, I think if you base everything on a 4 times multiple for external, then you will not be disappointed. I always say that you shouldn't overestimate, you should underestimate, and then you'll be pleasantly surprised. So this gentleman in question has not only cash flowing 200 grand a year, and he's using that money to buy the assets, he's also got an asset there that's worth £800,000. Incredible. And he put 10 grand down. He tried it with 10 grand. That is it, my friends. It is possible. We've just got to think differently. And it's just going out there, doing the legwork. It's not bloody easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Most people will say no. Most people will say, absolutely on your bike. There's no way you're getting free rent for 6 months trying you. And then if it works, they could kick you off and say, haha, I'm going to do that. So yes, there is risks. And obviously it's not easy. Otherwise everybody would be doing it. But it is possible. Somebody has done it. And if somebody's done it, that means you can do it. You just need to go out there, hit the word hustle. You've got to go out there and grind. What is it? Driving for dollars. That's what I do. I drive all the time, looking at other self-storage, looking at other places, because that is where the money is. You've got to get out there and drive, find these locations, find these little pearls, these little diamonds in the rough. And it is possible, my friends. I love it. I love self-storage. As you know, I've got a wonderful episode coming up. Is it Friday? Let's have a look. I could have... oh no, I've had a wonderful episode just gone on Wednesday. Right, guys, I've got to go. My LinkedIn is blowing up at the minute. So yeah, I've got to go and reply to some messages. All right, guys, girls, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. I love you. And remember, it is possible in self-storage. It's a wonderful, wonderful industry. I'm its biggest fan. For me, it is literally so exciting. Can't wait for this journey. See you soon, guys. Love you. Appreciate you. Bye.